Good morning, everyone. I know you hear a lot of construction going on outside, so when you're speaking in the mic, you're gonna make sure you're speaking to the mic because the noise just started. And I thought it wouldn't start at all, but as soon as we get ready to start this hearing, they seem to know we can restart the hearing. So good morning. I am Robert Stokes, Chairman of the Education, Workforce, and Youth Committee. I'd like to introduce the committee members of this committee. Councilman Bullock from the 9th District.
Thank you, Mr. Chair.
Councilman Torrance from the 7th District.
Thank you, Mr. Chair.
Council Vice President Sharon Middleton from the 6th District.
Thank you, Mr. Chair.
Councilman Cohen said he is on his way. He's running late. Also, we have Councilman Burnett from the 8th District and Councilwoman Odette Ramos from the 14th District.
Thank you, Mr. Chair.
Also, we have Nikki Thompson from President Mosby's office. I don't want to beat your name up, but DeGraffin Wright from the Council President's office. Also, Nina Thimlis from Mayor Scott's office.
Thank you, Mr. Chair.
Okay.
Got the whole team.
Also, I have the great staff person here, Marguerite Kern, who really make us look good. Okay, I got everybody. So we going first on the agenda is Council Resolution 22-0098R, upkeep and maintenance of vacant lots and public green space. For the purpose of requesting the Director of Department of Recreation, Parks, the Director of Planning, the Director of Transportation, the Director of Housing and Community Development, the Head of Bureau of Solid Waste and Sustainability, Coordinator, a representative from the Office of the Comptroller, and the Chief of the Bureau of Budget and Management Research to report on an annual total calls of service for upkeep, maintenance of vacant lots and green spaces. Before we go over the agency reports, I want to turn the hearing over to Councilman Burnett, the primary sponsor of the resolution, for opening remarks.
Thank you, Mr. Chair, colleagues, and agency representatives. So just to keep it short and sweet, as the grow season begins in our city, it is one of the most common and frequent calls that we get to the council office is concerns about lot maintenance, green space, mowing of vacant properties. And so I felt it was important to continue to monitor the progress that is being made to improve our operations, our ability to respond to these concerns and better upkeep vacant lots, green spaces, park spaces, et cetera. The resolution, I will note, does call for the consolidation of responsibility, but we note that that's not as important, at least to me as a sponsor. I did have an opportunity to meet with the city administrator and several agency heads earlier this week to talk about some of the challenges with that. And so not really the button I intend to push a whole lot on today, but most just really concerned and wanting to learn more about what the plan is for the spring and summer to make sure we're doing a really good job maintaining green spaces in the city. Thank you, Mr. Chair.
Thank you. I also like to recognize Councilman Glover, a member of the committee from the 13th District. We're going to go over the agency reports. City Administrator, could you talk about your report?
All right. Good morning, Mr. Chair and council members. Really appreciate being able to be here. We certainly heard you last year at the start of the season and have been working diligently as a city government to coordinate and make sure we were coordinating services. Ultimately, as we prepare for, and at this point have started the grounds maintenance season, what we will talk to you about today is sort of all the work that has happened over the last few months to make sure that agencies are working together. We were very clear last year that it didn't make operational sense for us to manage all grass maintenance or grass mowing, grounds maintenance via one contract, and that every agency had a very specific portfolio with very specific needs. What we want to show you this morning is how we are coordinating throughout the city. We have some, sorry to know that the presentation won't be able to work, but glad to know that you all have the slides in front of you What we will show this morning is what tool we will use to better coordinate, and I should say tools we'll use to better coordinate, and ultimately how the agencies have individually prepared for the season ahead. Certainly appreciate the push from council to make sure that we were coordinating this work and that we were prepared this season to make sure that we were doing the work of cutting and maintaining our green spaces. So with that, look forward to the conversation.
Thank you. From the Law Department, Ms. Hillary Ruley, you want to talk about your report? Okay, thank you. Department of Finance.
Hi, good morning. Bob Senemy, Department of Finance. We stand by our report. We took the approach in our report of just sharing some of the financial information, summarizing what each of the departments do and the contracts that they have to support the work. So we stand by that and happy to take any questions on that.
Is
after
that
the
favorable?
presentation. Favorable, yeah.
Okay, thank you. Department of Rec and Parks. I know you're opposed. Could you talk about your report also?
Good morning, Councilman. Thank you for having us here today. We stand by our report. I've also shared with the members of the committee a map that we created that outlined the 5 days of the week, because we mow 7 days a week, and so everybody gets cut on the same day. That map is interactive as well as static, and it's also a layer on our BCRP interactive map. If you have any questions, you can let me know that. I sent it to everyone by email early in April.
Thank you. Department of Transportation, can you talk about your report? Oh, okay, you got Liam Davis. Thank you.
Mr. Chair, we stand by our bill report, which is unfavorable. We can get into a little bit more detail during today's conversation. Thank you.
Thank you. Planning Department.
Good morning, Kim Knox from the Department of Planning. The Department of Planning respectfully recommends disapproval of City Council Bill number 220098R and defers to the Department of Recreation and Parks as the more directly impacted agency. We understand that while it seems that it would be better to have one agency in charge of the process, in practice it would be difficult for one agency to manage all of the different sites within the time schedules that work for those using the spaces, as well as providing a reduced opportunity for local small businesses to bid and be selected for the maintenance of some and or all of these green spaces. Thank you.
Thank you. Department of Real Estate.
Good morning. Casey Kelleher from the Department of Real Estate in the Comptroller's office. We stand by a report as favorable. The report includes our calls for service within the past year or so, and I encourage you to look at that and ask me any questions. Thank you.
Thank you. Department of Public Works.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Marcia Collins, representing the Department of Public Works. I just want to let the committee know we have Ms. Yvonne Moore-Jackson with us here today and her team to help respond to any questions. We stand by our report and we'll be happy to respond to any and all issues that are raised today. Thank you.
So your report is favorable? Or
Yeah.
Okay, thank you. Housing and Community Development, I see Ms. Murdock here also.
Yes, thank you. Good morning, Mr. Chair and members of the committee. Stephanie Murdock, Legislative Liaison for the Department of Housing and Community Development. Commissioner Kennedy sends her regrets that she was unable to join us today. I do believe we have Ms. Anika Middleton here with us, our assets manager. DHCD is pleased to participate in this informational hearing. While we do not directly provide maintenance and mowing services, we do work closely with the Department of Public Works to ensure the upkeep and maintenance of vacant lots by routing work orders to that agency. DHCD stands by our bill report, which is unfavorable. However, we are supportive of the discussions to improve the efficiency and upkeep of these lots. Thank you.
Thank you. Before we go to any council members for questions, unfortunately, the presentation, I guess the TV stopped working today. So Mr. Drew Vault and Dan Himmelwitz, if I said that right, could you just come up to the podium and present. Everybody have one of these? Should have one. Somebody over here. You got one?
Here we go.
You good? Okay. Councilwoman, you have one? Oh, okay. Can you identify yourself when you start?
Absolutely.
Please?
Drew Vaught, Baltimore City Information Technology. I'm the Chief of Data Architecture and Analytics. My component in the broader grounds maintenance strategy was just focused more on the technical side, which is just one piece in a larger, more comprehensive strategy. The first slide appears the image is not, it didn't print out on the third one, so I can kind of walk you through on the fourth slide some of the components and the aspects of what we did as part of our effort heading into the growing season. In essence, what we wanted to do is engage with each of the respective agencies that has a part of grounds maintenance services throughout the city, and take all of the data that they have within their respective data systems, consolidate it together so we're able to provide a common operating picture for decision makers in those agencies. And so, as the screenshot shows on the fourth slide, there's flexibility immediately when you go onto the web map where you're able to see the total number of overdue work orders relative to service level agreements, the total work orders that are currently open, and the total that are going to be due within the next week. Now, the data refreshes from all of the systems on a nightly basis, so it's not real time. It doesn't synchronize with those systems. So even if someone were to key it in, just say at 3 o'clock, it's not going to show up again until the next morning. The agencies that we engaged with were the Department of General Services, Recreations and Parks, DPW, HCD, and the Department of Transportation, all to ensure that we're getting that kind of common operating picture. In addition to what we've developed, agencies or decision makers within the agencies have the capability of either clicking on a particular parcel or right-of-way to get some of the just core fundamental information related to the work order, and they're able to see based off of the color of the polygon, the degree at which it's either going to be overdue, or B, in breach of SLA and therefore overdue. This is in its final stages right now, and it's all of the technical processes have been put in place now for a month and a half, and it's been an effort that we started since December to try and make sure we make this happen and get this information in the hands of agencies. So that is all I have. I didn't know if we wanted to do questions or wait until afterwards.
Also, I'd like to recognize Councilman Corn, member of the committee from the 1st District.
Mr. Chair, committee members, my name is Dan Heimowitz. I'm the director of the Mayor's Office of Performance and Innovation, which includes the City Stat team. Thanks for the opportunity to be here today. I'm going to continue on the theme around what we're doing to ensure coordination and quality assurance of grounds maintenance work here in this growing season. So I'll try to kind of cue us along to the slides that we had submitted. That is what I'm speaking to. So if you look at slide 6 in the presentation, this is just an overview of the different roles and different location types that the agencies responsible for grounds maintenance cover. I'm not going to kind of read this off one by one, but again, I think this highlights the scale and the variety of types of work that these agencies are responsible for, from Rec and Parks, DGS, DOT, and DPW. Moving on to slide 7. As the city administrator alluded to, we spent a lot of time leading into this growing season we're in, working on various aspects of the quality assurance process that agencies do, as well as refining what we are doing in the Clean Stat meeting to provide additional layers of, kind of oversight and quality assurance. So you can see on slide 7 some of the things that we were working on in the past few months, working with agencies to establish standard practices and SOPs around grounds maintenance quality assurance. And then also, again, clarifying the processes and procedures for what we're doing in Clean Stat related to ensuring the quality of grounds maintenance work. So moving on to slide 8, I'll talk about this in sort of 2 parts after this. Number 1 on slide 8 is just a bit about the department's own quality assurance procedures, and then number 2 specifically about what we do in the Clean Stat meeting itself related to quality assurance. And on the for those of you who have the slides, on the left-hand side of the slide is a photo of our OPI inspector who actually goes out to sites to see the quality of work in person. So in terms of department quality assurance procedures, as I mentioned, a lot of work was done in the past few months to ensure that there was clear and coherent QA processes across the different agencies, but also specific to the agency's own operations related to quality assurance. So I'm on slide 10 now. You can see on the right-hand side, that's just a screenshot of the kind of resulting QA processes that each of the agencies developed. And agencies here can speak to the specifics of what their agencies are doing. But what we tried to do from our office was just to ensure that there is a certain clear set of categories that the SOPs speak to. So including the expectations around how many and where inspections take place, where the photos from inspections are stored and what is done with them, in terms of findings from those inspections for agencies, what is actually done in terms of follow-up if and when there are issues identified, and also, of course, how the process, the QA process itself, is communicated within agencies. So, OPI's role was supporting agencies just through that process in the past few months to, sort of strengthen and, basically just codify these processes. Moving on to Clean Stat, if the agencies, of course, have their own, operational procedures for ensuring the quality of the work they're responsible for, that is complemented by the work of Clean Stat, which is a every other week meeting led by city executives and including all of the agencies responsible for grounds maintenance. And it's another layer of ensuring the quality of this work and a chance for cross-agency coordination and problem solving where necessary. So moving on to slide 12, I want to talk about specifically the role of our inspections in Clean Stat. Again, that's separate from what the agencies are doing for their own quality control. So, of course, we're looking at the quantitative data in our stat meetings to see how well things are going. But in addition to that, we have an inspector who actually goes out to visit a sample of sites that we can then review together for aspects of the quality of the work in those meetings. And you can see on the left-hand side of slide 12, these are the factors that we look at in terms of like the issues that we're looking for. And then on the right-hand side, a little bit about just the methodology. We select sites at random. We don't necessarily tell the agencies where we're going. And we go 1 to 2 days before the date of the scheduled service for scheduled work, and then we also go again 1 to 2 days after the scheduled work, and that of course allows for a clear before and after, insight into what's happening. So from that, we share on slide 14 just an example of how we were doing this at the end of the last growing season, so well into the fall, just as a little bit of a picture of what we're looking at just in the Clean Stat meeting. So. On slide 14, you can see a summary just for one Clean Stat meeting, just for the Rec and Parks mowing from that particular 2-week period. Again, we're not visiting all sites. We're visiting a sample in any given week. So it was 5 locations. You can see there's a column assessing how well the work was done in terms of the pre-service before the scheduled work was done, and then our assessment of how things looked in the post-service after the work was done. And so I'm not going to talk through all the measures we look at, but for example, the mowing looked quite good in this case. You could see the grass was long in the pre-service visit. That's the second row I'm looking at. And then all 5 locations we visited, mowing had occurred on the scheduled date. Slide 15 is an example of just going beyond that sort of summary data that I just talked through on slide 14. Slide 15 shows how we get into some of the sort of more case study type work where we actually talk about a specific site. We'll put up photos from the pre-service, again, the visit before the work was scheduled to have taken place, and then after. And that's where we really get into real depth and operational details, identifying if and where there are challenges, what can be done, where there is a need perhaps for sometimes cross-agency coordination. And so we spend a fair amount of time not just on that, again, that summary slide, but also the discussions around the actual photos of the work that have been taken. So that's a bit of a look at what the agencies have done to strengthen their quality assurance procedures, and then what we do on top of that in the Clean Stat meeting every other week together as a group led by city leaders. Thank you.
Thank you. Also, I want to just recognize that Councilwoman Porter, who's a member of the committee, has an excuse for today. Thank you. Before we start with our questions from our council members and the committee members, I just want to let my council members know it's 2 questions from each council person, because we have 2 more other bills we have to hear, and we don't need to be here all day. Thank you. So I'm going to start off with our Vice President of the City Council, Councilwoman Sharon Middleton, for her 2 questions.
Thank you, Mr. Chair, and I guess my question is more of a statement. So I'm going to start from here. I'm in my 15th year on the council, in my 4th term, and every single year we talk about grass cutting. Every year, beginning of spring, all of us as council members, we start to get the calls in, whether it's a vacant lot, whether it's a medium strip. It's every year it gets out of hand. And sitting here, I appreciate I saw that this was, this thing was put together, or some of the slides are October, November. This stuff has been going on even before the pandemic. And we find that, or I feel we find that there seems to be a problem within the agencies is, number one, trying to work together. And we spend our time as council members representing our districts. We see these lots. It's the same places over and over and over. There's no coordination. There's no, if it's like this is what we do during the summer. We handle our grass cutting. And it's really just become it's embarrassing. We can't, with our constituents, we find the same constituents calling about the same places that they live next to. We have a problem with city-owned vacant homes. It's just a terrible problem. And I've been to other cities where they do have they have a separate program where spring and summer, they cut the grass. There is hardly no problems. Not in other cities. Other counties don't have the problem that we have in this city. So a lot of times it seems to be boiling down to money, staffing, but there has to be some kind of conclusion to get this done so it's not a burden and responsibility that we should not be responsible for. I definitely appreciate, we spend our time calling. That is not part of our jobs as council people. That's not part of our jobs. I respect all of you for the ones that we do have we make our calls to get these properties done, but there has to be some kind of resolution, and quickly. We can't keep having these kind of meetings over and over every single year. So I hope you're feeling my frustration. This has to stop. It's clearly an embarrassment for the city. So if there's some new reassuring way that can help us, that's what we want to hear. We don't want statistics of stuff. We want the damn grass cut, period. I'll stop there. Thank you.
Well, Council Vice President, that was your 2 questions. Thank you. City Administrator, sure want to make some comments.
Well, let me acknowledge first that we heard you last year. I don't want to make the mistake of saying there won't be challenges this season. But I do want to acknowledge what we've heard this morning. We have to sort of celebrate the staff and the team when they are able to do the things that we've been able to do over this last few months. Huge leaps forward in the sense that we now have a system that we can all use internally, operationally, to tell us which properties should have been cut, if they've been cut. We now have processes in place centrally through OPI around quality assurance and quality control. Not just if the grass has been cut, but the quality of that cut. We also have agency by agency QA, QC processes. That's what we've heard this morning. And ultimately, when we think about a city's effort to maintain its public properties, the cutting of grass, this is exactly what cities should be doing. Now, I will acknowledge that this is the first season that we've been able to do this centrally and to manage it in this way. So it will not be a season without kinks. But what I am saying is that we have made some significant leaps forward in terms of our capability, our ability to actually work together as a city. We've also worked, as you saw in this presentation, to make sure that all of the agencies have their contracts in place, that agencies that manage grounds maintenance with internal crews, the portion of that work that's managed by internal crews, that there's also quality assurance and quality control procedures for the internal crews. So again, enormous leap forward in terms of our operational capability here. And I want to just acknowledge the staff, the agencies who have done the great work. And we'll work hard this season to make sure that the tools that we've established this year, where we need to improve them because we get negative feedback from the community, that we are prepared to improve them. But again, I just want to say we've heard your push, and we have made some significant leaps forward during the off season.
Thank you. Just a comment. I understand. I know how hard the agency. I know how when I can call Miss Moore and she just take care of 12th district. And I'm sure she do that the whole city. But I wanted to mention, how are we addressing the customers, the constituent who we really get to call about? It's got to be a little bit more friendly, And I understand you making some changes, but when a constituent have to call either one of us up here because they've been reaching, trying to get the grass cut. They say they're going to cut it. There's no timeline. And then when one of the council person call, it get cut right away. All I'm saying is it should be more customer friendly with our constituents. They shouldn't have to call us to get it cut right away. It's got to be a more customer friendly system. And right now, hopefully the changes you're making, City Administrator, we will see that happening.
Mr. Chair, I appreciate that, and we'll invite agencies to speak to the customer service piece of this in terms of how when residents call, how they're treated. I will say that part of that is knowing who owns which property, right? And so the ability now for us to say, we know which properties are on a 1-week cycle, and we know which properties are on a 2-week cycle, and we know now which agencies own those properties in terms of the maintenance. This will go a long way in terms of our ability to answer the question, when is this property going to be cut, and when was it cut last? So I think we've now armed our 311 operators, we've armed the staff that answer these calls with good, consistent information. This, I think, will help them be a little better with customer service and empower them with better information. Again, appreciate your question, and my hope is that with better tools, with more information, with more consistency, with QA/QC, that we are moving towards a path of much better operations in our city around grounds maintenance.
Thank you. Colleagues, this is my second question. I'm going to be fair, okay? My next question, City Administrator, is when there is city-owned property that the grass need to be cut, why can't it be on a schedule? Because I know if you're using housing refers it over to Ms. Moore's office, and if it's city-owned, the constituent have to keep calling if the grass got to get cut again, but it's city-owned. Is there any way those particular lots that actually are city-owned can be put on a schedule instead of waiting for call 311 to have it cut?
I want to invite DPW to jump in here. I imagine that this is a capacity issue, that this is ultimately the number of city-owned properties, the amount of work that it takes, how quickly the grass grows on these individual properties.
Well, real quick, I looked at the chart, and actually DPW get 400 requests, what, a month, am I correct? That's a lot. How are you going to catch up with that?
Hello. Okay, so we get roughly 26,000 requests during the growing season, 26,000 work orders between April 1st and October 31st. Our vendors are responsible for 400 per month, and then our internal crews complete the rest. Right now we have 8 cleaning crews for the city. So when residents call 311, we go out based on the geographical area and when a service request comes in. So that's the way we are performing the work right now.
Ms. Moore, could you state your name? We forgot.
Oh, I'm sorry.
That's
Yvonne
all
Moore.
right.
I'm sorry. Yvonne Moore Jackson, Department of Public Works, Bureau of Solid Waste.
And why aren't we using, in my district, and I'm sure my colleagues in our district, we have community associations that have the equipment that can cut some of this grass in terms of kind of catch up and be responsible for the area where they live at? Are we looking at, I have some in my district actually cut a lot of grass. So are we looking at that in other districts to hire some of the communities that have the equipment and can cut some of this grass so they don't have to wait till housing call DPW and say, we got to wait till we get the work order? Because from my understanding, if I'm clear, when housing get calls about cutting grass, it's 311 driven. But if it's city-owned property, why are we waiting for Odette to call back again, because now the grass and got tall again instead of putting it on the schedule? I mean, it seems to me it would be much easier if it's on the schedule instead of keep using that 311 system, and then you got to call housing, you got to call DPW. It's a disconnect somewhere that probably, as the city administrator, maybe you can look into that and see how do we now put those city-owned properties that come from housing to DPW.
So all of the mayor and city council vacant properties and vacant lots, along with the privately owned vacant property and vacant lots, they're all in one basket. We have the 8 crews that handle all of that, along with one vendor. So when you're talking about doing proactive work, it's, you know, we don't have the resources at the time to do any proactive work. And that's something that we're working on.
Yeah, we will certainly investigate, and this would be individual contracts with individual vendors to service individual properties. And cities don't do that well. So we will certainly investigate what mechanism we could potentially use to activate community support around individual property in this way. Want to not sort of I don't want to get ahead of DPW in that maybe some of that work has already been done, and there might be reasons why we haven't as a city. So noted, and we'll certainly investigate.
Thank you. I'm going to be quiet. I think I did more than two colleagues. So, Councilman Bullock, you have any questions?
Thank you, Mr. Chair. No questions, but I do want to, again, thank you for the work you're doing, but also echo what Vice President Middleton mentioned. Again, this is an issue every year, and particularly in the growing season. So, you know, this coordinated approach is something that we desperately need, and we get a lot of these complaints. So I appreciate you taking the time to hear from us today and making sure that we're all on the same page. Thank you, Mr. Chair.
Thank you. Councilman Torrance?
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I just want to make a request. Can we have access to this dashboard?
Councilman Torrance, I did it myself. Could you?
Apologize. Sorry,
speak into
Mr.
the
Chair.
mic?
Can we have access to this dashboard for the council and our staff? Because it would be helpful for us to communicate with communities about it. Because I can tell you that I have a list of 67 lots.
Councilman, can you pull the mic closer to you? Thank you.
This would be better. I would like access for my staff as well as the other council members, because I have a list of 67 lots that we've pulled from 311 that we know every year are going to end up in my email as like we need to actually have cut. And it will be helpful to see the real time, like where we are in terms of those processes, because telling constituents we're going to get there, and then when it gets too high, and then we have to send in someone to do it. And I say this personally as someone who's had to go out and actually cut a lot as a council member to get it off the list, right? But the other request I have is, one is really digging into the data about proactively how do we identify these lots in advance so that we can have our housing inspectors go by and actually think about, have we, one, for those privately owned lots or those privately owned homes, do we have vacant building notices so that we can cut that grass faster, right? And just in short line our processes so that we can get to the work orders faster. Because what I'm finding is that there is no vacant building notice placed on the buildings. And we have to go through this process again for the 2 unabated citations and then wait for someone to cut it. And then I just want to make sure we figure out a way to streamline some things from 2 agencies.
Yeah, appreciate that very much. If you have the list of 67 properties, send it to me. We will manage to that list throughout the season. I really want to put agency leaders in a position to do the work. The MoMap system as it is currently configured is an internal operating tool, not necessarily configured in a way that for public access. We hope that as we get the kinks worked out this season, that we can maybe next season provide access to you and your colleagues, but it's really not meant as a tool it's really meant for agency and agency coordination. And what I would like to do is just suggest that if there are specific properties that are nuisance properties that become problematic, especially mid-growing season, that you send them to me, send them to us, and that we will leverage the OPI process to make sure that we're managing the cutting on those properties in particular. I hope that answers your question.
Yeah, yes and no, but from being in City Hall before, we had access to when there were city stat data and they were provided to our staff before. This council staff before. I would like to bring back that practice so that we are being transparent in terms of like oversight too, because that is how we can avoid oversight hearings that we're having currently now in resolution. So if we can get a monthly report somehow where we are in terms of where the data is and where the actual work orders have been placed historically, saying whether or not an actual lot has been historically put in our system yearly would be helpful as well, because I just want us to be transparent, right? Because no, it allows us to have answers for the public, but also allows us to manage expectations with the agencies and understand the work power, the manpower, and the issues that you currently have.
Understood, and absolutely happy to provide monthly report outs during the growing season of the work. I think our capability is much better in terms of being able to provide those report outs. So it's something that we could definitely do, and we'll follow up with the chairman to make sure that those reports are configured in a way that is helpful to you.
Thank you. Councilman Glover, you have any questions?
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Being a former employee of DPW, what are you guys doing to take the necessary steps to employ more workers, get better equipment, so these issues that we do have that plague our communities are being addressed? I know that in the McElderry Park, our park community, we have like a triangle park there, and often we have someone from DPW, solid waste, Recs and Parks, even housing, come out and do community walks with us. But for some reason, that park is being neglected when it comes to picking up trash. And what happens is that we have some local partners that comes out and clean with us. They're left responsible for picking up those cans that are overflowing. And we have them in the community all the time. And I understand that there is a 311 request that needs to be made, but many workers are in the community doing work from 311 complaints, but it appears to the community, and I know it's not the workers themselves, we're going off the 311 orders, but it appears to the community as if we're driving past the overflowing of a trash can instead of picking it up. So what are we doing, again, Mr. Administrator, to make sure that we hire, decent workers, getting the equipment that we need? Is there a budget that you think that we need to implement and provide more funding to in order to make sure that Baltimore is getting, the taxpayers are getting the due diligence they deserve?
Yeah, I really appreciate that question and want to invite DPW to jump in on this as well. COVID has definitely had an impact on our the number of employees that or I should say the number of positions that have gone vacant. And I will say that we've also had, and I believe I've reported to council before, recruitment events where we have provided significant, that have been successful, where hundreds of residents and some non-residents have applied for those solid waste worker positions. So I would say, generally speaking, what we've done as a city is to make sure that those recruitment events and that the ease of getting recruitment and hiring done has been assessed. It is not something that I would imagine that DPW would say is completely fixed, but we've come a long way in terms of trying to get those positions filled. That's the biggest challenge, actually filling the positions so that the number of crews that we expect to start the growing season with, we actually start the growing season with. If we do not, and we do not have our full complement, it makes it very difficult for us to keep up with the amount of requests and the amount of even routine work that's being done. I want to invite DPW to jump in as well.
Yeah, so one of the things that we were able to do is to have DHR post many of these positions continuously, so they're always posted. That is the CDL driver 1, the CDL driver 2, our solid waste driver, our solid waste worker, and our solid waste laborer. So these positions, this is the staff that actually cleans up cleans up the vacant lots, vacant properties, and also for our routine services, trash and recycling pickup. So these positions are open continuously, and we pull names off it weekly, and we bring these people in. So we are continuously recruiting, hiring people. In the month of February, we hired 25 people. So we are getting people in constantly.
That's great news. Just to piggyback on the city administrator, I've also gotten phone calls from various yards in reference to, I didn't even know this, I don't even know if any of my colleagues know this, but we have temp agencies working with the city of Baltimore. And I've gotten calls from those employees from those temp agencies stating that they hadn't gotten a check. And the check isn't given to them by a superintendent, from my belief. I believe it's coming from the staffing agency themselves. But I'm getting calls, multiple calls, in reference to, again, they're not receiving their check, but they've been on the back of a load packer for that week. And we all know that it's a very strenuous job, you know, hard labor, and these individuals aren't getting paid. Some of them I was told that because they may have gotten off early because the route has been done, that they will receive their check that following Monday. So if you can maybe talk to the superintendent or someone at the Bowley's Lane location, that's where I've gotten the majority of the calls from.
Yeah, I'm not aware of any temporary employees not getting paid. We do have some staffing agencies that work for us. I'm not sure. I don't know if you received the name or anything, so I can look into this specific case.
I can email it to you.
Okay.
So yeah. And another thing, are those staffing employees? Do you know of? Are they getting the wages like lower than the actual employee that works for the city of Baltimore? Are they getting any type of benefits to the city, or even because of their agency? I mean, what are we doing in reference to what I just mentioned, the wages, and even if it comes down to the benefits of these individuals?
So the staffing agencies get paid by the staffing agencies. We have a few seasonal maintenance aides that are in the process of becoming permanent. We have the vacant positions, and they're going right in. So we haven't hired any new seasonal maintenance aides in probably a few months because we have the vacant positions, and most people are coming in right into the position of a solid waste worker or a solid waste laborer or a solid waste driver, CDL driver 1.
And the wages of that temp agency worker?
I don't have that offhand, but we can get that back to you.
Okay, I appreciate that.
Are you talking about the seasonal maintenance aide?
Excuse me?
Are you talking about the seasonal maintenance aide?
Yes.
Okay, I'll find out. Okay.
Thank you.
Hey, Councilman, what was the request you just mentioned?
I'm sorry?
What was the request you asked Ms. Moore about?
It was basically about the workers, the wages of the city workers
Okay.
who are working temporarily with the city of Baltimore.
Okay.
Yeah, that's cool. Thank you, Mr.
Thank
Chair.
you. Real quick before I get to Councilman Cohen, City Administrator, I know how hard the workers work in the city, but a lot of times the starting salary, even if they permanent, after a while they'll go somewhere else and work and make more money. So I know you've been hearing that a lot. So you're gonna work that miracle. So make sure those city employees stay here, don't go other places because of the salary outside of Baltimore City. So I just want to make a comment. You don't have to comment on. Councilman Cohen.
Thank you, Mr. Chair, and thank you to Administrator Shorter and all the agency folks here today. First off, amen to my colleague's point about wages. We fought really hard last term to give a raise to our frontline sanitation workers and make sure we were not paying them literally poverty wages with no health care while they were riding the back of a truck. I would just echo what's been said that, given that this is a year with ARPA funds and all the rest, given the challenges that have been expressed about not being able to hire people, the fact that we're only one time every other week on recycling. Give folks a raise. I mean, start the salary higher. Make sure the people that are doing the hard work for our city know how much we value them through their paycheck. Back to the issue of grass, I think Chairman Stokes said earlier, and someone else as well, I think what constituents find most frustrating is they do a 311 and it gets closed, but the grass hasn't been cut and there's no sense of timeline. In the new QAP, whatever the system that we're now deploying, is there a way to communicate timeline? Because I find that to be among the most frustrating points for constituents. It's like if you level with people, if we level set and say like, listen, it's going to get done, but it's going to be 9 more days and then it's going to happen. I think folks are much more understanding versus if it's just like the thing gets closed, there may be follow-up, but at that point the constituent is in our ear and is upset because why did my request get closed? When is it actually going to happen? I'm calling up Jenny, asking her when it's going to happen. She's calling. I mean, it feels like, again, the system is incomplete on the constituent-facing 311 side. So I'm wondering about whether we can provide accurate timelines on when grass will get cut when constituents call or 311 app it in.
I appreciate that question and comment. Two things. What we've heard this morning is by way of routine cutting, sort of the grounds maintenance, where we know that this parcel or this property is going to be cut every week, or this parcel or property is scheduled to be cut every 2 weeks. That is what we are certainly managing to and studying when we come together in the stat. From a 311 perspective, where residents are calling in for non-scheduled services, that is based on service agreement. And so we are also in the stat looking at how often we are actually meeting our service level agreement timelines. And so there's also some management to those statistics as well. So it's not something that we are not focused on or not paying attention to. I want to invite agencies to speak to this point as well. If there are specific ways that we look at constituent calls and how we treat them, invite you all to follow up. And I don't know if that, Councilmember, if that
really
answers your question.
Administrator Shorter, is can we provide when someone calls in, whether it's scheduled, and so we know it's going to happen every second Thursday, or whether it's non-scheduled, could we, within a reasonable amount of time, just get back to the constituent and say, this is when we expect this to happen?
Yes. So for this service, I'm not sure what the service level agreement is. Maybe someone could jump in and tell me. But if let's say the service level agreement is 10 days, then what we are saying to the constituent is, thank you for your call. This parcel should be cut in 10 days. If it is not cut in 10 days, the system should reflect that. What we are doing at our stats is essentially looking at system-wide how often we are able to actually meet our own timelines. So if it's supposed to be 10 days, if it's supposed to be 7 days, if it's more, how often are we actually meeting those timelines? So yes, there is an immediate response that we should be able to have to a constituent, and that is to say the service level agreement for this service is this, and we will cut this parcel or abate this property on that time frame for whatever that time frame may be.
Just in closing, I'm going to be looking for that this year because that has not been the experience, at least for me, in past years. I get far too many people who say, I did this 311, it got closed out, and there's like no responsiveness in terms of when the work is actually going to happen.
Well,
separately, I think there is the concern of close versus transfer is still a underlying challenge for us. So let me not overpromise that the issue of us properly communicating when an item or when a service request has moved from one agency to the next agency, not because the work has been completed, but because the part of the work has been completed, where it's an investigation and now is going to move to DPW for abatement. We still have work to do in terms of how we communicate that. That does not change the fact that for a specific kind of service, where the service agreement is clear, service level agreement is clear, it is a one agency responsibility and it's not going to move from one agency to the next, then yes, we should be able to hold to our service agreement.
Real quick, City Administrator, I believe it starts at 311, because when that constituent make that call, and if you don't explain it that the 15 days is for the investigation, not gonna get the grass cut right away, that confusion is there. And if that work order is referred to another agency, it closes. So when the constituents say they didn't cut the grass, it's because that particular agency, if I'm correct, is not the one that's cutting the grass. They had to refer it to another agency, and that's why it was closed. That's where the other confusion comes, is that, because I hear it all the time. Then when you call, they say, oh, that went to DPW because housing don't cut grass. So when they see it, it says closed. And the constituents say, well, they ain't cut the grass. Well, the reason why they closed was housing had to refer it over to DPW because they the ones that cut the grass. So that 311 first call, and when it's closed, is not explained to the constituent, that's where the confusion come in. I'll get back to you, Councilman Torn. Councilman Burnett, who's the sponsor of this bill, has been waiting patiently. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. So I wanted to lift up a point that my colleague, Councilman Torrance, raised about proactive mowing. Both Department of Housing and Comptroller's office aren't directly responsible for mowing. They refer those out. But both are also complaint driven, which I continue to argue every year creates an equity issue, because for communities that may not be as engaged, the amount of the call volume to 311 is going to be less. And oftentimes, some of these don't get called unless the council office is calling or a community association is raising the issue. Whereas more active communities, the second we've hit the 9th inch of high grass, they're on it. And so for me, it's a continued concern that communities that may not have strong community leadership or may just feel like they're done with calling because at no point is it being done proactively, that there are blocks in my district and other districts that are abhorrent until somebody takes action. The concern that I have, I do understand capacity, and I don't want to ignore that, but there is a subset of properties that we know every single year the city's coming to mow them, and they may be privately owned with a vacant building notice. And in fact, since we've been sitting here, I've reported 2 of them because I realized that on the 3400 block of Edmondson, I forgot to report those 2. I had reported the ones on the 3500 block proactively myself because I know, and I was texting my staff like, all right, well, they're not doing promo again this year, so we're going to have to spend some time on a Friday driving around to the areas that we know there's going to be high grass at some point to just proactively put it into 311 because nobody else is going to do it. And I think it's a shame that we continue to allow that to be the case when there are, again, a subset of properties. I know we can't do all of them that have a BBN proactively, but there's some that we know we're going to keep coming back. And the reason I raised the ones on Edmondson is because the ones that I reported 2 weeks ago have been mowed. Now that I put it back into 311, a crew is going to have to drive right back out to the same location to do the other side of the street, which isn't efficient in any way. We're wasting gas, we're wasting time if we know that this block, there's going to be, these 4 houses or 5 houses are going to have high grass and weeds. The property owners aren't coming to save them. There is no auction notice on the building. It's going to be high grass. And so the question I have is, with the statement, is just the concerns about equity when we're reliant on community to report things. And we know that we're what is the response there to how we address this equity issue that arises when we're relying solely on community complaints to then trigger a reaction for properties that we know are going to be there, right? Maybe some sort of carve out or complaint-driven process over a 5-year period. I'm sure you have the data that could show that these houses are going to be called in at some point this summer.
Hi, thank you, CAO Shorter, if I may. Stephanie Murdock, Legislative Liaison for DHCD. I just wanted to clarify for the committee and those watching from home, DHCD inspectors not only respond to the 311 requests, but they do conduct proactive inspections on existing notices and citations. So they will go ahead and make those referrals, and it's not completely reliant on the 311 system. Our inspectors are generally able to make it out to the 311 requests within 1 to 2 days, and so far in 2022 they've been able to successfully make it out to those requests 99% of the time within that time frame and make those referrals. So I just wanted to make that point for the committee that we are responding to not only the 311 requests but also in their course of regular inspection making referrals for cleaning and boarding.
I appreciate that. I would just say that it still was requiring labor by the code enforcement people for, again, there's got to be a percentage of properties that every single year your inspectors are going out to or somebody's calling. We know it's going to be there. The ownership status hasn't changed. It's still vacant. So, that's what I would push back a little bit on that. There's got to be some additional analysis to do this particular subset of properties at least on a proactive basis.
You make very good points, Councilman, and appreciate especially the point about efficiency around going out to respond to a service request and then needing to come back out a week later to respond to another service request that is literally across the street. I think that is it's a fantastic point and one that we'll certainly take back. The point about equity is one that we'll also take back. We've heard quite a bit about, especially over this last year, who takes advantage of 311 and who doesn't. And so appreciate the point, and I've taken note, and we'll certainly discuss it internally.
Thank you. The second question, or really one that's been raised already, but just wanted to second, is the MOMAP access. And I understand that there are concerns about it being publicly accessed. I get that. I would request that at a minimum, the 311 call takers have access to it. Because often if a constituent's calling and says, hey, I'm calling to report this in, at least if they have, hey, because on the map, the first page in the presentation, it does show this is supposed to be done in the next 11 days or 12 days or whatever it is. At least they can communicate that, because our constituents haven't fully adjusted to the new 311 system that if there's duplicate calls, it just sort of cancels it out. So they still think that if we get the whole block to call about the lot, then maybe something will be done about it. And that's just wasting their time. It's wasting the call taker's time, especially if they could just tell that one person or that one community leader, hey, the person on the other end said it should be done on April 15th or whatever, May 11th, it's happening. And if not, then we'll call back. But that way people aren't wasting their time continuing to sort of bog down the call takers by reporting, or the app, and continuously reporting the same issue over and over again without knowing that, hey, there's a date that we should expect a response, and then if it doesn't hit on that response, then I can call back or get my neighbors to call.
No, I appreciate that, and I want to be clear. I would say that the mayor, the administration, the agency leaders are really committed to transparency around this operation. And the challenge with this system is it's a new system, and to open this system up even to 311 operators when it could be unreliable is a recipe for failure for us. This is an operational system for now. And by that, what I mean is that by next season, maybe we have a state-of-the-art system that we can rely on and we can open up. So for now, what I'm suggesting is that that agencies be put in position to work with 311 when a constituent calls, especially for this system. It is for routine services. So those properties where we know they're on a 1-week schedule, so they should be cut every 7 days, or properties that are on a 2-week schedule. So the ability for us to communicate that out to residents should be relatively simple. And for us, a system that's being used really for operational purposes and to make sure that agencies are working together well may look a little different than one that is meant for our 311 representatives, for our elected officials, and certainly for the public. We are going to work towards, and we're going to get there, where we have a system that folks could log into, see very clearly, real time. We are just not there yet. We are certainly, we're making leaps forward, but we're just not, we're not that far ahead just yet. I will say that we'll make a concerted effort to make sure that we're arming our 311 representatives with as much information as possible, and also getting back to them really the basics of which agency services which property and on what time frame. I mean, up to this point, we haven't even had that kind of information in a real consistent way. And so, again, happy to sort of curate, design a report that makes sense for you all, so that you have a better sense of how well we are managing the system, how many of our properties, non-routine, were serviced based on the service level agreement, how many of our properties that are routine were serviced based on the 1-week or 2-week schedule. This is the kind of information you need to know in order to provide that kind of oversight of the operation.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. And I do want to lift up that I am glad that there is a tech solution that's being developed. I think that it is a step in the right direction, and I do look forward to the reports and monitoring the progress. Thank you.
Okay, before we go to Councilwoman Ramos, when you finish, we're gonna wrap this up. If my colleagues got any other additional questions, you can send that to the agencies, because we have 2 more other bills or resolutions we had to address. So, Councilwoman, your 2 questions.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I wanted to start with a positive, then I have a suggestion, and I've got my questions. I did observe that, at least in the parks in my district, we started mowing a lot earlier, so I do appreciate that. As a matter of fact, we hosted an egg hunt in Wyman Park, and the kids complained it was too easy to find the eggs. Now, I'm not saying go back to May. I'm just saying everybody noticed, okay? So I do appreciate that. Clifton Park is looking much better. Thank you. So the second thing is that I think what my colleagues are talking about is, this issue of our vacant lots. And recently we have a lot more vacant lots because of the money that came from the state for Project Core to demolish properties. And if I am correct, and Dhcd might want to correct me if I'm wrong, I believe that was through that program we were able to demolish over 400 properties. Okay, that means there are more 400 lots to mow. And I would suggest that we look to the state, because basically this was one of the responses that the governor had after the uprising, to say, oh, Baltimore's terrible, we're going to take down all these houses. And so I think we need to go back to the state and say, well, you had all this money to tear down these houses. We tore 400 down, and now we need money to maintain the lots, because there was no plan. There was no plan for those lots. So that is something that I'd be happy to help with, but I think we need to identify when those were and what those were, and that it was done through state money and Maryland Stadium Authority, and whether or not the Stadium Authority would actually come back to maintain those lots until we have a plan. That's a lot of properties. So I'll be happy to help in any way on that as well. I do think that in the future, as we're doing demolition, that we do think about this, like we know that eventually there will be a plan. Like in my district, we have 10 acres that have been demolished, and we do call all the time to get them mowing, but making sure that there's actually a plan in place for our vacant lots. So my question, I didn't see the school system on your coordinating list or the comptroller's office on your coordinating list. The comptroller has a lot of vacant lots, and the school system has, obviously fields and other places that they mow. I'll give you an example. In my flood area on 35th and Hillen, they have to mow Mervo, and often they're actually pretty good about coming out. But they don't pick up the trash first. So I'm wondering if this coordinating effort is including the school system and also the comptroller's office because they have the lots as well. And then are we telling our maintenance, to pick up the trash first?
For the, thank you for that question, and thank you for the earlier statement around the state's role. Completely agree. In terms of the agencies that are subject to the stat process, the public school system has not been invited to our stats around grounds maintenance. We certainly will make that ask. I'm just not, they're not required to, and it would be voluntary. In terms of the comptroller, it's just a conversation that we need to have. Up to this point, they have not been involved. Your question about picking up the trash before a cut. This is exactly why we have worked so hard as a team, as a city team, to make sure that we had adequate quality assurance and quality control procedures in place by agency, so that agencies can go take pre-cut checks to see what condition the property is in, and then post-cut checks to make sure that we've picked up behind ourselves in terms of the servicing of those of the properties.
Thank you. And then my last question was, you had stated on the 311s that, oh, excuse me, thank you. You had stated Ms. Murdock had stated that with the 311s that the inspectors go out for the vacant lots in 1 to 2 days. What is then the time frame after that where the work order is placed and the lawn gets mowed? And if you mentioned it earlier, I apologize if I missed it.
The work order is placed immediately after the inspection.
And then how long does it generally take for DPW to put in the work order?
Our service level agreement is 30 days for high grass and weeds and also cleaning.
So that's not acceptable, waiting for 30 days to get a lot mowed. Is that because of the lack of resources?
Well, it is a lack of resources, but like I said previously, we get roughly 4,000 work orders per month. We have 8 crews and one vendor to assist with those 4,000 a month. So the service level agreement is 30 days. We try our best to get there within those 30 days. So I mean, until we get more resources, that's probably the best we're going to be able to do at this moment.
Okay, thank you. Just pointing out again, 30 days is, I know that you try to get there beforehand, and I appreciate that has, in a lot of cases, has happened, but we probably need to change that. Thank you, Mr. Chair.
Thank you, and we will be moving forward. If you have any additional questions, all I wanted, this concludes, there's no one signed up to testify. This concludes the public testimony. Councilman Bernard, do you have any closing remarks?
I want to thank the agencies, and again, I did want to lift up, it is noticeable that things are moving earlier this year, so I do want to thank you. I feel hurt after many of these conversations. I haven't had as many as our vice president, but I think this is the 5th year for me, I do want to acknowledge that. And the last thing I did want to ask, though, is that if the report could be weekly or bi-weekly instead of monthly for the mowing. Just want to throw that out there. And I'll email you, Mr. Administrator Shorter. But with that, that's all I have, Mr. Chair. I think this is a good discussion.
Okay, Council Vice President, she got to make some closing remarks also.
Thank you. I would be remiss if I didn't say something final. First of all, I just want to thank you, Councilman Burnett, for bringing this to light again. And the piece that you mentioned about equity is so clear and prevalent and in the communities, because we all find that this is happening consistently in those communities. And, you know, a number of us also have big projects, Park Heights. We know it's a lot of land there. Just imagine what I go through every year trying to make sure that grass gets cut for the houses that are torn down, way over 60 acres. It's just become so burdensome. And all of us have areas with projects. You have to reconsider the 7 to 10 days. We're in a rainy season now. So we have properties right now in areas where the grass is probably already 3 feet high. I have areas where I personally have to call because no agency is paying attention to it. So I don't know where these inspectors or where they're going, because there's areas that they're not paying attention to, and it's on my radar to consistently call. That is the city's responsibility, not the city council's responsibility. That's the message we're trying to get here. Reconsider the 7 to 10 day thing, because that's a mess up too. When that grass grows, we already have a drug problem. We have violence in our city. They store drugs in this high grass, in our areas that need improvement as far as our equity issues. You gotta look at the whole big picture and what we continue to go through over and over again. Look at the private versus the city-owned. The process is so, you say 10 days, it's really like 20 days, because if it's a private area, it's still got to go through a process with the agencies. So the city doesn't get sued. There's so many things that are, and at the end of the day, all we want is the grass cut in these areas, along the gateways, it's been a mess, it continues to be a mess, and it should not be city council's responsibility. That's the message we're trying to get across. We definitely appreciate all of what every single agency continues to do with this issue, but I still say there needs to be a separate department for 3 or 4 months. It's that simple as far as I'm concerned.
Thank you, Councilwoman.
I'll stop right there.
Appreciate it. Councilman Torrance, and then we're going to take a vote, because we got 2 more resolutions. We got to be respectful of
Sir,
people's
I
time.
will be quick. I have 2 suggestions. One is a low-tech suggestion, and this is for DCHD. When we do inspect the properties, can we leave some type of marking, like if they did treatments to our grass, in the grass to say that we've been out, so that neighbors actually have some physical thing that they can look at that basically says we've done it, we started that process. And then as for one of the things, I'm going to reiterate this on the budget hearing, we need more money for solid waste, right? Because at the end of the day, the agency that does illegal dumping to everything else and to grass cutting, we still are dependent on general funds, and we need to actually send more funding there, because the people who are the most seen and work is most seen in this city is that portion of DPW, and we need to make sure that we lift up the fact that that portion of DPW needs to see a shift in funding. And I'm going to reiterate this at the budget hearing, but I want to reiterate it again. They need more money, because this is an issue not only of efficiency, but also, and I'm going to bring this up with the budget office as well, there's a difference between service level and actual physical human capital to actually get the work done.
I second that statement.
Thank you, Councilman. There was no one signed up to testify, so this committee will take a vote. Do we have a motion to vote on Council Resolution 22-0098R?
So move, Torrance.
Motion made by Councilman Torrance, second by Councilman Glover. Stokes is a yes. Councilman Bullock?
Yes.
Councilman Cohen?
Yes.
Councilman Glover?
Yes.
Council Vice President?
Yes.
Councilwoman Porter, excuse, Councilman Torrance.
Aye.
The motion passed. The resolution will be placed on second reader at the next council meeting on Monday, May the 16th. Thank you for attending, and we will go on to the next resolution.
More money for solid waste. More money for solid waste. More money for solid waste.
Thank you. Typo on here, but that's all right. Should be short. You're just going to make remarks in bold.
I was actually here.
I know who I am.
Okay.
Working for me on my. I know.
Oh, okay.
I was just
No
I
problem.
thought they just did it.
Oh, yeah. It's good to be back. Although it was to get away from it. Okay. Organization reached out to us randomly yesterday.
Oh, they should. That's the same group.
Yeah, it sounds like they're doing a sort of like separate survey.
All right. Have a good day.
I just want to make sure I'm
Start
not
back up.
breaking.
You can make start back up.
Oh, yeah.
Day.
Okay. All right. Okay.
Thanks for the hearing. This is good.
Okay, next on the agenda is Council Resolution 22-0056R from the front door to the schoolhouse door, for the purpose of inviting representatives from Department of Transportation, Health Department, Baltimore City Public Schools, the Mayor's Office of Children and Family Success, and the Office of Equity and Civil Rights to discuss how children's commute to school. This committee held a hearing on resolution December 16th, 2021. It was a good hearing, a good turnout, and great testimony. Before I make a motion to vote on the resolution, I'm turning the hearing over to Councilwoman Odette Ramos, the primary sponsor of the resolution, for remarks.
Thank you, Mr. Chair, and thank you, committee members, for indulging me today. First, I want to point out I made a typo on the testimony, so I will get you a new copy. Mr. Chair, I just wanted to make some follow-up remarks to the hearing, and then invite the committee to vote out the resolution. You'll see in my additional testimony, my staff and I have done a lot more work on this issue, hearing from members of the public in the hearing in December, and came up with these recommendations that our office will follow up on, and hope that the committee members will join me. We want to urge the General Assembly to add a seat for the Baltimore City School students on the Maryland Transit Administration Citizens Advisory Committee. Right now there are no students on there, and yet the students make up a lot of the ridership in Baltimore City. We want to have MTA create a student advisory committee. We understand that actually the MTA has committed to doing that, which is a wonderful development. We want to make sure that the MTA One card is extended for 24 hours, 7 days a week. One of the things that we heard at the hearing was that the students are not able to participate in after school and other opportunities because the One card pass is only for certain hours. So we would work diligently both with the MTA and in our budget to be able to expand the availability of the One card to 24/7. We want to make sure that student safety is improved at the MTA bus stops, and that would include work with DOT and MTA to make sure that there is proper lighting and at the bus stops, because students do have to stay at the bus stops in the mornings, early in the mornings and late at night, depending on the time of when sunset is and sunrise, and are feeling unsafe. We want to make sure that MTA, and we'll advocate for MTA to make sure that there is a friendly and transparent system for submitting complaints and provide annual reporting to this body and to the General Assembly. Prioritize bus usage during student usage. So currently priorities for buses from A to B is really for regular rush hour, and we need to make sure, and I think DOT is moving in that direction, to have so that students are not always late for school. This is one of the reasons why students are late for school, is because the MTA cannot get them there on time. We want to obviously reduce vacant buildings because when students are walking to the bus stop or to school, the stress of having to walk next to vacant buildings does affect their learning, and obviously we're all in the middle of working hard on that. And treat street harassment and sexual harassment on the bus as a public health issue. You will see from my office, we will be introducing legislation to create a commission that would work to end street harassment in the city and work with the MTA on also making sure that there is a campaign against sexual harassment and training of their bus drivers on how to intervene when something like this is happening. So I'm grateful for the conversations we've had with the MTA and with the advocates. And Mr. Chair, I thank you for the opportunity to make these remarks and sort of set the agenda for how we want to move forward on this topic. And I appreciate the committee's time. Thank you.
Thank you, Councilwoman. So do we have a motion to vote on Council Resolution 22-0056R?
So move, Torrance.
Motion by Councilman Torrance, is it a second? Second. Second by Councilman Glover. Stokes says a yes. Councilman Bullock?
Yes.
Councilman Cohen?
Yes.
Councilman Glover? Yes. Council Vice President Middleton?
Yes.
Councilwoman Porter is excused, and Councilman Torrance.
Aye.
The motion passed. The resolution be placed on second read on the next council meeting on Monday, May the 16th, 2022.
Thank you, Mr. Chair.
Don't go nowhere because we got one more. We're going to go right into it. Next on the agenda is Council Bill 21-0047, Charter Amendment Dante Barksdale Career Technology Apprenticeship Fund for the purpose of establishing a continuing non-lapsing Dante Barksdale Career Technology Education Fund to be used exclusively to supplement pre-apprenticeship programs and other workforce development programs, requiring a minimum monthly appropriation to the fund, authorizing the mayor and the city council by ordinance to provide the oversight, governance, and administration of this fund, and submitting this amendment to the qualified voters of the city for adoption or rejection. The committee held a hearing on this bill on April the 27th, 2022. We are reconvening to hold a work session. I'm turning this hearing over to Ms. Nikki Thompson, who will go over the proposed amendments and other topics pertaining to this work session. After Nikki Thompson and Aaron DeGraffenite are finished, I'm going to ask the committee council members if they have any questions.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Nikki Thompson, Director of Legislative Affairs for Council President Nick J. Mosby. And we are here again to discuss, oh, can you hear me closer? Okay. We are here again to discuss 21-0047 for the Dante Barksdale Career and Technology Education Fund. Last hearing, we provided an amendment, and I hope all the agencies have had an opportunity to review the amendment. It's based off of the recommendations from the Law Department, and it quite simply strikes the language in lines 21 through 28 on page 2, removing the more specific monthly payment that subcontractors would have to pay into this fund. We also believe that this amendment would address the concerns from the Department of Finance's report as well, but it still leaves additional funding sources in the legislation, which are on page 2, lines 29 through 32, and that would still include money appropriated to the fund in the annual ordinance of estimates, grants or donations made to the fund, and any proceeds from fines, fees, surcharges, or other revenue dedicated to the fund by the ordinance. So we believe this amendment is friendly. We think it still aligns with the purpose of the bill, and we thank the Law Department for working with us on this amendment.
Okay, thank you, Ms. Thompson. Do any of the council members have any questions or comments? Okay, this is pretty good. Do we have a motion to vote on Council Bill 21-0047? I'm sorry, we have to vote on the amendments. Okay, we're going to vote on the amendments. Councilman Stokes says a yes. Councilman Bullock?
Yes.
Councilman Cohen?
Yes.
Councilman Glover?
Yes.
Council Vice President Middleton?
Yes.
Councilwoman Porter is excused. Councilman Torrance?
Aye.
Okay, this amendment passed, so now we're going to actually vote on the bill. Do we have a motion to vote on Council Bill 21-0047?
So moved.
Motion made by Council Vice President. Is there a second? Second by Councilman Glover. Stokes is a yes. Councilman Bullock? Yes. Councilman Cohen? Yes. Councilman Glover? Yes. Councilwoman Vice President Middleton?
Yes.
Councilwoman Porter is excused. Councilman Torrance?
Aye.
This motion passed. This bill will be placed on second reader at the next council meeting on Monday, May the 16th, 2022. Thank everyone for being here.